very warm welcome to Planet FM 87.6. I'm your host Ismail Abbasi, and today we are celebrating World Radio Day here today at our radio program. And we have some very special guests with us, and we are going to talk about radio and its impacts with regard to climate, as this year's radio theme is how radio resonates with climate and how is it going to play its part with regard to climate change. We have educators, environmentalists, and community leaders as our guests today. First of all, I'm going to welcome our esteemed guest. Welcome. We have with us Mr. Tom Kerhang Anthony, who is OIC UNESCO Pakistan. Welcome, sir. We also have Candida Vesalo with us. She is Heritage Cultural Expert from Italian Agency for Development Cooperation, AICS Pakistan. We also have Dr. Zara Hussain with us. Dr. Zara is founder and director, Largewood. And we also have Mr. Rabnawaz Saab, who is the Senior Director Programs, WWF Pakistan. I welcome you all on my show. So, World Radio Day, as today is 13th Feb, and World Radio Day is celebrated annually. It was initiated by UNESCO in 2011, and it aims at bridging gaps, promoting diversity, multilingualism, and because of its far reach, radio tries to promote education. And as we talk about Pakistan, and in particular Pakistani context, we see that climate is becoming a big hazard in Pakistan. So UNESCO is trying to provide awareness to the marginalized community with regard to environment as well. And we're also going to talk about how radio is going to play its part in imparting education and enlightenment. We're going to start our panel discussion with our esteemed guest, Rabnawaz Sahib. Rabnawaz Sahib, how radio can create climate awareness and disaster preparedness? How can it play its part?
Thank you, Bessa. So, very good question, and I think it's very important. There's no coincidence that the communities which are most vulnerable to climate change don't have access to the kind of new means of communication. So if you look at the coastline, if you look at the mountain areas, a lot of people don't have TV, they don't have electricity, they don't have access to 4G and internet, so they do have access to radio.
Yes.
So as part of our building resilience in coastal communities, we give radios because it is the most important way of communicating for fishermen who are on the coast. They don't have access to internet, and they're also out in the sea. And radio is so important for two reasons. One is that, as you can imagine, if you want to get a message out really, really quickly, radio is a really good way because you're not reliant on electricity. You have a radio, you can wind it up, you put batteries in, you can get the message across. So getting a message across to communities that are going to be hit by a disaster, be it a sea storm or a flood or a typhoon, is a matter of life and death. If they can get the message within time, they can move their family, they can move their assets. The second thing is it's very important for disseminating messages, because climate is changing so quickly. So even climate change itself is such a emerging phenomena that it's really important you use radio to explain to people, what the future is coming, so they can get ready. So that could be a 6 months or 1 year or 1.5 year message about farming, about fishing, and just about the heat waves. So I think that's really important. So radio for fisher folk on the coast, for the mountain areas, but also very important for farmers, because again, farmers don't always have access to internet. They do have access to radio. So again, because our economy is an agriculture-based economy, it's very important that we get that message across. And finally, I think radio it's quite an old way of communicating, and most youth now listen to podcasts or whatever. But I think the old generation still use radio, and it's the old generation, I think, who do still have the ears of the young generation. So if you can if you can get the older generation to actually start teaching the youth about what it was like in their days, how things are changing, and I think the youth don't really make use of that knowledge and expertise. So radio again is a good kind of medium to get their message across, so that people can actually start spreading the word. So in a nutshell, it's very important. Maybe it's a bit of a niche market these days, but it's very important that we keep that messaging and that mode of communication alive.
Great. So Nawaz sir, the impacts of radio that you talked about, can you refer from some example from the past incidents where radio has played the part in creating some sort of resilience?
Absolutely. So the coastline, so in the coast, we've given radios to the fishermen, so they've been able to keep up to date of the weather conditions in the sea, and we've been able to get messages to fishermen, well in advance, so they can get their boats back to the shore, they can get them moored in protected areas, and then they can move their families inland. So this is, when we see a storm coming or a typhoon, we make sure those radio messages are given out, with Pakistan radio, and they do use radios, and they do see the value of having them. So very practical application is the advance warning to climate phenomena.
Thank you so very much for your insights. We have Dr. Zara, and Dr. Zara, we move from climate to radio's role in preserving cultural heritage. What do you think is radio's role over the years, and what role it can play in future in preserving culture?
Yeah, thank you. I think radio is primarily an oral medium of transmission of knowledge or ideas. And when we think about radio, it does bring up this nostalgic idea to it, especially for us in the cities. But it's very interesting in the way that the radio has, retained its role for marginalized communities as well. And since it's a very oral medium, you see that, folk cultures, folk songs, or folk stories, these are narrated through radio primarily. And I've also seen in the areas that I've worked that, people who listen to radio or use radio, they're quite attached to this medium. And they have their own sort of network of radio listeners who are listening, who are listening to the programs. So I think in that sense, radio plays an important role, and it can play a very important role in the preservation of local or native languages, in the preservation of folk stories, and folk songs, and then it also becomes an expression for local artists to actually, retain their cultures through this medium.
True. So, Dr. Zara, do you think that if we stick to our culture and if we somehow manage to preserve our cultural heritage, that will help us create certain resilience with regard to climate as well?
Absolutely, because I think radio is also used by farmers in agricultural areas, and they're also talking about how they are thinking about the climate, how they are using some traditional techniques to overcome some kind of a crop disease or an animal disease. So I think in that sense as well, radio becomes a mode of exchange of indigenous knowledge or indigenous wisdom as well.
Yes, I guess, stories, when we look back into folk tales and stories, they had played a part, and there was a time when people would not waste, for example, water as much, and there is a lot about this in folk tales. And I think if those old traditions, and with regard to, using less vehicles and burning less fuels and all, so I think that can play a part.
Absolutely, and I think for intergenerational knowledge exchange as well, so the elders telling stories and the younger children listening to them,
yes,
then the radio becomes a very important tool in that as well.
It does. Thank you, Dr. Zara. We have Tom Kerhang Anthony, who is OIC UNESCO Pakistan with us. So Tom, we would like to have your insights on how UNESCO promotes cultural diversity and multilingualism. We will come to planet as well, but first with promotes to cultural diversity and multilingualism.
Yes, thank you for this question. As all of you may know, UNESCO, this is our mandate to ensure preservation of cultural heritage.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to cultural heritage, it's not just about the tangible ones, also the intangible one. As Dr. Sarah mentioned, radio is a good medium to promote intangible cultural heritage on folk songs, oral traditions. So for UNESCO, we do have some engagement with particularly to the community and also schools to particularly focus on the youth and children to let them know what is the importance of heritage preservation and also give some ideas what are the practical ways for them to preserve heritage. I would say preserve heritage is not something big. Everyone in the community can do it. So this is one of the elements UNESCO have been advocating with the youth and children in that sense. Now the second point I also want to emphasize is because UNESCO, we also support a lot of media development in the country. Now when we talk about radio, we also talk about different types of radio, including community radio. This provides a lot of opportunities for grassroots level to generate content. At the same time, as also Dr. Sarah mentioned, also to relate to a particular language in a particular region, promoting multilingualism. So this is also another element we can see to promote cultural diversity and multilingualism.
So now, can you explain to our listeners when you say community radios, what does that mean?
Yeah. So now you are now listening. Now all of the colleagues here. Actually, this is not considered community radio because in different parts of the country, some people maybe in a community, in a village or in a district, they would like to have some messaging. They have collective messaging, so they would like to set up some kind of channel to disseminate the message to the community.
Okay.
So those are not mainstream radio that you are now listening to.
Okay.
So one of the important elements of this is that because it's grassroots driven.
Okay.
So that means that any messaging they can provide is through the community and by the community.
Fair enough. So Tom, has UNESCO thought of using radio, or has it already used radio in bridging gaps in education?
Yes, absolutely. This is also another important mandate for UNESCO because, as all you know, education is very crucial for the country's prosperity and development. So we believe that using radio is a good opportunity to bring messaging to schools.
Okay.
So what we did is that particularly, I can give an example.
Yes, please.
Back to the COVID-19 crisis. We work closely with our partners, donors, ICE, to really have an important project to try to make use of radio to create content and also bring to the schools. So in this project, we reach at least 18 districts in the country, reaching over 50,000 youth and children. So the content includes, as I mentioned earlier on, about cultural heritage preservation, knowledge about how to be safe, health, being health cautious. Last but not least, about some knowledge about climate resilience.
Okay. So I guess that makes a lot of sense. I mean, what we heard from our esteemed guest, Mr. Abnawaz as well, that I mean, radio is a medium that can be used for resilience. In COVID-19, many mediums failed actually. We teach at universities and colleges, and we failed by and large to get into connection with our students because many didn't have, for example, internet to get connected through Zoom or Canvases. So radio is something that you don't need much of technology or much of internet, and because of its access, it's played a part. So how many students have you reached through that particular program in COVID-19?
Yes. So as I mentioned, the project was targeting 18 districts. So based on our estimation, there are about 50,000 children.
50,000?
50,000.
Great.
But this is a conservative figure because as you mentioned about one of the characteristics of radio is that it can reach more because as long as you can receive the signal.
Okay.
So that we believe that there will be more than 50,000 learners. They benefit from this intervention.
Okay. I think I would ask Candida Vassallo about the idea behind funding this program, because she is one of the donors, or she is representing UNESCO AICS Radio Education Program. So can you talk about the scope and the purpose of this program that just Tom talked about?
Yes, so the Radio Education Project has the scope to contribute to the educational emergency in Pakistan, basically in line with governmental and UNESCO priorities. And the main aims is to create an engaging and supporting a learning environment to address the challenges and to use the potential and communities to education and lifelong learning in remote area of Pakistan.
Okay.
So in areas that are really difficult to reach. I mean,
True.
so using the interactive radio education approach, that is the approach that we have already used in Radio My Friend project during COVID-19,
Okay.
the project intends to provide educational and informative content focused on the topics of education for sustainable development, global citizenship education and climate change, environmental awareness and cultural heritage conservation. So, with the endorsement of the federal and provincial authorities and local implementation partners, this project intends to involve 30,000 children, mainly girls, in 300 primary and secondary schools in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, Baluchistan province, and Gilgit-Baltistan regions. And 17,000 youth and adults, because it's not just for children, but also for the family, of course,
Okay.
and including teachers, school department officials, and parents, of course, and all community members. So the radio has the role to actively involve the communities in this remote area through a participative learning process, with the scope to motivate the school attendance and new enrollment. So this is the first point. Then to divulgate climate-friendly practice for mitigate the climate change. So in order that everybody can understand what is the practical way to reduce and mitigate the climate change. So what is our part, how we can give a contribution.
Fine, fair enough.
And then to reinforce resilience and enhancing preparedness for the spectrum of potential disasters, including floods, earthquake, epidemics, and other emergencies. As you said before, the radio is really the important tools that can immediately inform people and so help. And the radio is also the crucial role of involving communities through a participative learning process. I want to emphasize this concept because it's not just a static that somebody listens, that's it, but it's the involved in participative way the community to foster a sense of belonging, respect and protection of their own natural heritage and their own tangible and intangible cultural heritage, as also Anthony said before, to enhancing and improving their lifestyles through social and cultural cohesion and to generate sustainable development. And so because this is the power of the radio, I think, is to connect people and create really social cohesion, and so that's it.
It does.
Yeah.
So if, any one of you can respond to this question. You talked about participatory and not being
Yeah.
passive and just listening.
Yes.
What was it actually? What was if you can explain the program, how it actually worked? Any one of you can give us an example how it actually worked and you managed to engage your audiences, those people in remote areas.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. Now, when it comes to radio education, I think many people would think that it's a one-way communication.
Yes.
However, as an educator, we believe that radio is just a way to transmit information. So how do we know the recipient receive the message? So that's why we have several ways to do. Now, during the COVID-19 time, because there's no face-to-face instructions, so that's why it can be another alternative, like through some other medium, like phone. For example, there's a phone line, a hotline. They can call, to have some interaction to see how the learners, they learned the content. For other occasions, radio can also be medium to supplement learning in the schools. So for example, when the learners, they listen to radio program, after class, they can also discuss with their peers, with their community. So there's also another way to try to test how much they get the understanding from the radio program.
Okay, that's great. So what I assume is that you guys also work in the 2022 floods that happened in Pakistan. Anyone of you can give insights how radio played its part in combating the flood damage in Pakistan? Anyone? Tom, with regard to floods, did UNESCO use radio to combat floods?
Well, for that case, yes, from UNESCO, for us it's more about how to build the capacity, particularly for those content creators, journalists, how to respond to climate change reporting. This also linked to, later on I can also talk more about why we use radio. This day we talk about another important concept. We call it media and information literacy. A lot of different information from different radio media, but how do we distinguish it is right or wrong? It's also come to a question about disinformation and misinformation. So for us, UNESCO, we have been strengthening the capacity of the media practitioners, journalists, those who are also doing radio program, how to distinguish what is right or wrong, and try not to disseminate wrong messaging to the public, particularly on those climate change information.
Sure. Dr. Zara, if you can respond to the question that how do you think radio broadcasters can play a part in, as just talked about, we have a lot of misinformation, disinformation, propaganda through our digital media, through, social media, and even the mainstream media, we tend to have a lot of propaganda. But people do trust radio still. I remember when we were growing up, we would go to radio for the actual news. We would say whatever the radio says that needs to be true. So what role radio can play, radio broadcasters in particular can play to, as Tom just talked about, to educate people, make them digitally literate?
I think there are two parts to this question. So how radio broadcasters can play an important and effective role is by, through the programs or through the messaging that we do through the radio, we basically instill or cultivate a socio-cultural consciousness in the audiences that are listening to the programs. And as far as the training is concerned, yes, that is very important, and that should happen so that there is some medium that the people can go to and connect with and still sort of remain connected with the reality, because as you said very correctly, that there's so many means of information and misinformation, and especially social media. We're just losing that attention span in terms of how we need to react to a news, and we're not getting that reaction time either as listeners. So I think radio can play a very important role in also kind of slowing down, especially in an age where climate change is happening so fast and information dissemination is happening so fast. I think radio is a very interesting tool to sort of slow us down and sort of calm down and really sort of understand what's going on. So in that sense, I think it's a very powerful medium.
I think I agree, because there's too much happening. I think as you talked about before as well, that people who listen to radio tend to have this calmness around them, because there is, imagination involved, because you're not actually visualizing certain scenes. So when we talk about, I think Maria, Candida Vassallo can tell us why you thought of funding or becoming a donor to such a program.
Because our approach as Italian Cooperation Agency is to find a simple but useful way to help people. In order that also is so radio is one of these. Because as also she said before, is part of the house of the people. So in this way, you enter in the house, you speak to the people directly, especially remote area. So it's the way to reach the area that is really too difficult to help. In our case, in our project, and radio, especially during COVID-19 and during flooding 2022,
yes.
And also help too much to also give a guide about the health and same practice, just to how many times during the day wash the hands, for just to give a simple example, but that help too much. And so it's a simple way, but it's directly and it's work.
It does.
So really improve the life of people, and so we think.
So you
That's
think
why we
that
really
being a
wait.
donor, you were satisfied with how the project went?
Yes, we really are really happy about the results of girls' education. That was the main project that finished last year, and that's why Radio Education project started this year, like a spin-off of that one.
So how was the response of the audiences? I mean, obviously you were targeting, you mentioned Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, you mentioned Balochistan, you mentioned GB. Sometimes, I mean, when programs as such are sponsored, people are a bit susceptible. They think that, no, I think they might have some other agenda. How was it received, the overall project?
I mean, they was really, for girls' education, I mean, the results was really great. Because the main object of this project that started in 2016, so before COVID and before this emergency situation, so the scope was just to improve the enrollment of girls in the school, and we really reached a very huge results. But then with COVID, everything changed, and so the results was really great, because also first of all, communities didn't feel alone when schools are, and also children when schools were closed, and when everybody were closing the house. I mean, so that was really getting a really great results, and so we are satisfied. So that's why today we are here to speak about the radio program project. Yeah.
So from this we assume that you plan to continue using radio. You keep
yes, because
funding.
in that time the radio, my friend, was just a small part inside the huge program that was girls' education. But now we opened a radio education program in line with them that is completely dedicated and focuses on the use of the radio.
Excellent.
So we start to use during emergency situation, but now we use also in
It
another way the
proved
radio.
a blessing in this time.
Yes, of course, because also we understand how radio can help in the prevention, in the mitigation, and also in reduce the effect in certain way of the disaster.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Nawaz, coming to you, you can be anecdotal. Do you think that radio has played any part in empowering you at some time of your life with regard to culture, climate, awareness?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I grew up with radio. I was a kid in the pre-digital era, and radio was a mainstay of information. And like Tom said, it was two-way then. And I think that's what Radio Pakistan has to do a bit more, is to make it a two-way interaction. Another thing which I remember vividly working again before the age of internet is the ability of Radio Pakistan to reach out in different languages. And I worked in a place called Palas Khorstan, which is deep in the Himalayas, and people would wait till there was a Sheena broadcast, and it was actually dedicated towards GB, but because the Khorastanis speak Sheena, and I remember we'd all be waiting for 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the evening, and everybody would be just huddled around this radio, and it is a lifeline. So I think that's something Radio Pakistan really has to realise, that in this age of internet, your ability to be more flexible and get out into different languages. And even in Khorasan, there is 3 or 4 different dialects. And again, that's where radio can really play a strong role, not only keeping languages alive, but getting that message to they're from the illiterate communities. They don't have access to education. Having that ability to actually reach out in a local language and get that. So I know that was, because I spent many years in the field, in the mountains, with no electricity, nothing. I imagine a lot of your viewers listeners can't even imagine not having internet. The importance of that daily link to the outside world will stick in my mind for a long time.
Yeah, so we have viewers and listeners both, because we are live on Facebook as well, because this is how things have changed. And even radio, we are in Radio Pakistan and we are going live as well. So I mean, this is fine, keeping up with the modern tools and all, but I think someone who worked in periphery or someone who lived in periphery, this is something that really even appeals me as well, this idea. Many people might not, sitting here in Radio Pakistan at the helms of affairs, they might not understand that how many people are still devoid of this internet or devoid of having those gadgets, because we are a big population. So a lot of people, I'm sure, now at this point when we are talking, this sounds a bit abstract, but there might be millions of people listening to us right now. So that's true. Tom, coming towards you, can you talk about future insights and opportunities that UNESCO plans to have with radio?
Yes. So as I mentioned earlier on, radio is a powerful tool to transmit messaging. I want to emphasize, radio is not just a medium. Basically, it's a bridge between knowledge and action. So what UNESCO has been doing and going to continue doing is how to strengthen those practitioners, media development practitioners, how to better use radio, as I mentioned earlier on, to ensure that they have the skills and expertise to manage disinformation misinformation.
Okay.
The second point I also want to mention is that today we talk about climate change and radio. Now, traditionally, radio may be used for emergency response, transmitted messaging during there's a crisis. In the past, a lot of focus is about reporting what's happening when there's a crisis.
True.
However, we need to go one step further, as Candida mentioned, about this prevention, mitigation. This is crucial. So that's why UNESCO, our current focus, try to ensure that, as I mentioned, capacity building with the radio media development actors. At the same time, try to create content which can help to fight against climate change. So that's why we have this education. We bring this kind of messaging to the school, to the community, to the students, to let them have knowledge, for example, how to be more environmental friendly, how to be green, be going green in the community. So this is the concept we try to advocate more through radio.
Fair enough. Thank you, Tom. So do we have any program coming up? Do we have anything in pipeline with regard to UNESCO's engagement with Radio Pakistan?
Well, of course, today, everyone is listening to this radio. This is the starting point.
Yes.
Because for us, community awareness raising is important. This is the first step.
Okay.
So after this important discussion, the next step will be, we would love to have more engagement to bring the message to a more regular program through Radio Pakistan to transmit the message how to preserve our important environment and also preserve our cultural heritage for Pakistan.
That's great. Thank you so very much, Tom. We are moving towards the end of our program, and I would like all the panelists to have their final word, their final say with regard to radio being a powerful tool in disseminating knowledge or cultural heritage or with regard to climate. Rabnawaz sir, please.
So I think my last message would be a request to Radio Pakistan. Reach out to organizations like WF Pakistan, to the rural support programs you have. We are a roots-based
So Rabnawaz, I'm sorry for the interruption. Can you talk about WWF a bit? Because I think our listeners are not very familiar with that.
Okay, well, if you don't know WWF, then shame on you.
No, there are many people. Again, the fact is that there are many listeners, many viewers.
Yeah, okay, So
And we already talked about they are listening to us in
Yeah.
paraphrase, they might not know that.
So Dog with Pakistan is a national organization. We're the biggest environmental organization in the world and in Pakistan. We have more than 1,500 staff. We're in about 50 offices across the country. So we're from Jivini all the way up to the China border. We are not just a species organization. We focus a lot on water, on climate, because they are the issues of Pakistan. But of course, species is our bread and butter. You are one of the most well-known brands, and I was saying one of our fortes is we are on the ground. We work with nearly 400,000 farmers. We work in the areas where there are no other NGOs, where even the government writ is a bit limited. So we work in Chitral, we work in Balochistan,
Great.
we work in Sindh. So we have the ability to reach out to communities, and I think we can bridge that gap. And as I said earlier, I think it's a crowded space now, information, and we've already talked about kind of the populism which is going on internet now. Trying to get the right information out to the right people is much more challenging than it was in the past. That's where we can help you. That's where we can reach out to our communities, the farmers, the fishers. We have a huge presence in the northern areas. So we can help you reach out to the listeners. We can also help you do content. I think it's getting us here in the room is really half the work. It's getting you as a presenter and the journalist to ask the right questions, because I think we have a limited time, and there's so much information out there. There's so many issues with climate change and resilience. You really do have to ask the right questions so that you can get that message across to people. It's a fluid situation these days. Climate change. You've seen that Pakistan is always on the number one. I think we're number one this year on a German climate watch, and we've been playing this vulnerability card and effective card for so long. I think that's got to stop. We need to now, as a nation,
responsibility. Yes.
Responsibility and show action.
True.
Now the time of playing that victim card is over. We're going to either become a climate victim or a climate champion. I think radio has a huge role in changing that narrative.
Wonderful, Rabnawasa. That's quite insightful. I really enjoyed your insights on the topic. Dr. Zara, you are basically someone who is already working, and you have founded an organization. Do you plan to engage with radio in any capacity to come up with cultural preservation and all?
Yes, I think I click on the point that we discussed earlier about periphery and center.
Sure.
That in the center, we're more aware and we have more modes of discussion, etc. But I think even in our cities, there are marginalized areas where people don't have access to smartphones or, televisions, etc. And we worked on a project about 10 years ago, and it was called the Aam Awam Radio. And we set up this local broadcasting system where children in different parts of Lahore could tell their stories of how they're grappling with different issues in the city in terms of, how they're involved in, for example, child labor, or how, their streets are not being cleaned up, etc. So I think that project sort of opened up quite a lot of avenues in terms of how children or communities can narrate their stories by using radio as a means to get across to other tiers of the society. So I think one is that, and the second is that, radio can play a very important role in building a collective sort of archive of communities, and especially because Pakistan or South Asia, we are very oral-based communities.
Yeah, true, yeah.
And for us, I think radio can then play a very important role, and in terms of preserving our different forms of expressions like, pahelis and tehtul lafz and all of that. So I think that area requires more work, and that would be my suggestion that Radio Pakistan should pick up on that.
Wonderful insights. Candida, your insights, how Radio Pakistan should work with regard to, or how would you like it, like to see it working with regard to environmental capacity building, climate capacity building?
Yes, this is a part of the project also, the part dedicated to the capacity building to the government department, and also for training teacher. And so I think that the role of the radio is crucial in this sense. And if you just give me 1 second, I
Please.
would like to close my
You
contribution
you
with
can
a
take as much time as you want.
with really simple sentence that
Yeah.
used our Italian engineer English Guglielmo Marconi,
Okay.
is one of the inventor of radio.
Okay.
And just more than one century ago,
Okay.
so it's 1897 that Marconi said, the radio aims to bring people closer together,
Okay.
to help them better understand and improve themselves. So I'm really happy to see that after so long time, we continue to learn from our history and so we continue to use this wonderful tool. I mean,
That's quite inspiring.
Yeah.
Thank you, Candida. Over to you, Tom. You can sum up the whole discussion. You can summarize whatever we've talked about and your perspective with regard to it.
Yes, thank you. So I think one short sentence to summarize what I want to say is now, radio is a medium, is not outdated. I want to debunk this myth. Even though the current generation, every day we have a smartphone.
Yeah.
However, radio has its own value because 98% plus of the coverage in the country. There's no other medium that carry that wide coverage.
In reach, yeah.
So that's why it's important for us. I mean, to remember this, it is an important tool. The second point I want to mention is how we ensure to use the content in a, I would say, a reliable way. So just I want to have advocacy to all the audience now. UNESCO, we have been advocating how to train people to learn to distinguish disinformation and misinformation, because it's all linked to how
True.
to listen to the content and do some critical thinking. So I encourage if you have the internet, you can Google it. We have several online courses on this area.
Great.
Misinformation, disinformation, we call it media and information literacy. So I believe that, you will all benefit from this, so that next time when you listen to some of the information or data from radio about climate-related issues, then you'll have a critical thinking skills to think how much I should trust or not. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Tom, and that's it from our discussion today here at Planet FM 87.6. I'm extremely thankful to all the panelists, and I would also say the same, that Radio Pakistan needs to take a lot of positive vibes today from what we talked about, and people believe that you have a capacity to serve, and people who are at the helms of affairs should be more empowered after listening to our esteemed panelists who have already worked in the field. Thank you so very much. That's it. I sign off. Goodbye.